All right. Looks like we've got a good amount of our attendance already here. So let's get started, shall we? Thanks, everybody, for joining us. My name is Samuel Pierre Gilles, and I'm actually joined with Lamont Gorman and Beston Koruthu from Trend Micro. And today's webinars um, is essentially set up to show you how we can make cybersecurity just that much more worry-free with Trend Micro Solutions. So it's a pleasure to have you both on the call. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Very excited about our Sherweb partnership, and this is our first official two partner-facing webcast. So glad to be here and have the opportunity.
Happy to have you. And so today's focus, I think it's to jump right into it, actually. I think today's focus is going to be on let's talk shop. Let's talk security. What you're seeing in the industry. Let's have a look as well as um, honestly as product people. Let's have a look pretty seriously at what types of solutions are out there on Trend Micro's behalf that could really simplify MSP's life and just service providers everywhere's lives when it comes to cybersecurity. We all know that the cybersecurity landscape has evolved so much, even over the course of the last like 12 to 18 months, and there's a lot of exciting technology to bring to the front. And so, if we skip to the next slide,
All right. Are we
fantastic.
ready? Cool. I'll kick it off then. How about that? Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right. Excellent. Well, as you can see, I'm joining you from my home media room here in Dallas, Texas. I'm glad to be here, as I said. So before we kick off and talk product, if you will, I think it's important to kind of set that landscape that we're kind of seeing uh, here in the market. And so I want to touch on some of the major trends that we're seeing. And as part of this, as part of the basis, I should say, of this section, I'll be leveraging the recent annual cybersecurity report that Trend Micro just released, actually. And so if you would like a full copy of this report, we'll provide it as part of our follow-up today. So as we know, cybercrime is exploding. In 2021, Trend Micro protected customers from over 94 billion threats, consisting of all types of threats, from email threats, malicious URLs, malicious files. This actually amounted to over 42% year-over-year increase, suggesting that cyber criminals were more active over 2020, which we all know was a record-breaking year within itself. And so let's drill down on some of these major trends that we'll be talking about today. So the first major trend that I want to review is the modernization of ransomware. It still continues to be a very formidable threat. And so let's talk about some of the data points that we've observed over the last 12 to 18 months on our side. So it seems like every week of 2021 and even now into 2022, there is a new breach making headlines. We saw modern ransomware was a formidable threat in 2021 and honestly will continue to be so as these operators have really adopted a more targeted like approach. Operators and their affiliates really focused on compromising big name targets for worldwide impact, really enabling them to demand higher ransoms, for example. And as we start 2022, we still see that ransomware is still on an upward trend. This is some of the research from 2021 where we saw these three families of ransomware being the most active in 2021. These modern ransomware operators really changed their tactics in that they used initial access tactics and different tools such as Cobalt Strike or PS Exact, or actually in other cases, other pieces of malware such as the Trojan TrickBot to really get that foothold and initial access to these networks. And so, these attacks really cross multiple areas of the network, and they really looked for business critical systems and and data. And oftentimes, what we're seeing is that the actual ransomware attack is is the last stage, I should say, of a double extortion tactic after they've initially gained access to the network, for example. And so, we know modern ransomware continues to be evolving. And let's talk about some of those evolutions, if you will. In 2021, we saw operators really customize their tools and tactics. This is very suggestive of their extensive knowledge, for example, of their target IT's environments, their target's IT environments, I should say. For example, ReEvil aimed customize attacks at the transportation and finance and oil and gas type of companies, specifically in the US, while the Conti related type of attacks really focused on retail and healthcare organizations, for example. And we saw one of the other things we noticed, particularly about modern ransomware, is we saw the operators really collaborate a lot more with ransomware as a service affiliate programs really gaining traction among the cyber underground. In addition, we also saw ransomware actors were frequent customers of brokers peddling, stolen credentials via access as a service schemes, for example. And so that's a little bit about some of the modernization that we've seen around ransomware and how it will continue to be a formidable threat that MSPs and their clients would really need to deal with.
So, Lamont, you're telling me that not only are these nefarious actors essentially getting smarter and friendlier with each other, but that they're going for the long con almost every time.
Exactly. I mean, we're really seeing this double extortion type of tactics as it relates to ransomware. We'll get access to the network, steal the data, and then we'll ransom you along with that in the second stage of their attack.
Mhm.
So I know we're probably tired of hearing about COVID, but I want to talk about some of those threats we specifically saw in 2021, just to talk about email threats in particular. So let's jump into the second major trend that we saw and we'll continue to see. So in 2021, we detected over 8.4 million COVID related threats, with the vast majority, 94% of these threats really coming from emails. And so emails threats will continue to be a major attack surface this year, as email and other collaboration tools are the easiest way to reach users like myself that are in a remote or hybrid workforce type of environment. And so beyond COVID, I think what we typically see is that attackers will continue to use current events as cover to initiate attacks. In 2020 and early 2021, it was obviously COVID. We know what's happening in the situation with Russia and Ukraine, and that is becoming another cover, if you will, for these threat actors to initiate attacks. And so let's drill down a little bit more on these specific email related attacks. In particular, business email compromise, or BEC, and phishing are definitely still major attack vectors that partners and customers are really going to have to deal with. So, on the phishing side, we saw phishing attempts double compared to 2020. Almost 40% of these, though, were really focused on stealing credentials. Again, normally this is the first step in a ransomware attack, for example. And so, we saw finance and healthcare and education were really the main industries with the highest phishing detections within 2021. But also through our research, we looked at business email compromise, and actually we saw a 11% decrease in BEC attempts. However, there was a slight surge in the first half of 2021. But rather than assuming that these fewer BEC attacks, that there were actually fewer BEC attacks, I should say, Trend Micro kind of sees this as an indicator of attackers actually increasing their sophistication in techniques to evade anti-spam rules, for example. And so defenders have actually kept up by employing the latest technologies, such as Trend Micro's cloud app security authorship analysis, which my friend Beston will touch on a little bit later on in today's presentation. So phishing and business email compromise still remain major attack vectors as it relates to the threat landscape. Just a few more stats on BEC. We found that the retail vertical continues to be an appealing target. Obviously, this industry holds an abundance of customer and partner information as well as financial data. So become lucrative targets for retail customers and partners focused in that particular vertical. And then the last thing I want to mention as it relates to email threats is the malware laden emails. We found that the information and communication industry was the industry most affected by malware laden emails. And back to my original comment, what we're seeing is malicious actors are taking advantage of organizations' increased dependence on email with more sophisticated techniques for evading detection, for example. And so the last trend that I want to talk about is specifically as it relates to MSPs and the unfortunate reality that we're seeing many MSPs face is the complexity that MSPs are facing as it relates to security. And so the reality is it's getting more complex for MSPs, right? I talk to many MSPs in my role, and I'm seeing it where they're dealing with the company perimeters no longer exist. And so it's more difficult to enforce security controls because, as you know, we're all working at home or maybe in a hybrid experience. The other thing I talk to MSPs about is the siloed security solutions. Obviously, they're responsible for managing all of these different solutions that may not be collaborating or correlating data across endpoint, email, network, et cetera. And some of the estimates out there is an average MSP could have anywhere from 25 or more tools that they're using to service their end clients. And then if I think about it, a lot of MSPs have very limited security expertise, strained IT resources, for example. I think we're seeing, as we all heard in the industry, the great resignation. That's a real thing. And so a lot of MSPs are overloaded with alerts, not only coming from security, but also from the other solutions that they're helping their customers deal with. And then lastly, if we just throw the nail in the coffin, if you will, besides all of these type of challenges in the threat landscape, MSPs and their clients are really dealing with a myriad of fluctuating compliance and regulatory type of compliance and regulatory type of requirements, for example. And so this is adding another layer of complexity as it relates to the landscape that MSPs are dealing with. And so I'm going to pass the ball over to my esteemed colleague, Beston, to talk a little bit about how Trend Micro is helping making cybersecurity a little bit more worry-free for MSPs and their clients.
Hey, thanks, Lamont. Let me just start sharing my screen here.
Yep, I'm going to change you as a presenter. Give me 1 second. Oh, there we
go. There you go. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we're all clear.
That's good. Thanks, Lamont. Again, just covering a little bit about the landscape. And so I'm going to talk a little about our solutions and how they would fit in currently against the threats that we face. So first of all, Trend Micro has been innovating in cybersecurity for over 30 years. And what's amazing is we've been profitable every quarter ever since going public. And that's even through the pandemic. And what does that mean? It means that we're a very responsible company, both to our investors as well as our clients. And with over 7,000 employees spread across 65 countries, we service customers all across the globe and most of all the top Fortune 500 companies. And so why is our tenure in cybersecurity market so important? Really because it's allowed Trend Micro to build out a mature MSP-focused cybersecurity platform like no other. From ecosystem integrations that include Microsoft Office 365, Google, Kaseya, or Splunk, to workforce security solutions built for all types of unique environments that have evolved through the Internet of Things, or IoT. We understand end users still pose the biggest threat, so we even provide awareness training to strengthen, as I call it, internet hygiene. And to bring management all together and easy for you, we include multi-tenant management and licensing that makes it quick and simple to onboard, deploy, and manage thousands of customers from one single console. And then to make things even easier, we offer a co-managed XDR service that brings the strength of our expert SOC team to help monitor 24/7, detect and respond to threats for you, as well as provide risk insights into your clients' environments. And this really allows you to take care of really the other long list of responsibilities you probably have aside from security.
Beston, I'm pretty excited to hear more about that one because it's definitely an opportunity to expand service offerings for those who might already have that first initial line of defense, and who might be looking actually to expand some of that value add that they want to bring to their more sophisticated customers, or even some of their customers that are very security conscious.
No, absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be we're going to be covering two offerings that'll easily fit into any ecosystem, and really the strength it'll bring to both your current service offerings and the value it brings to your clients. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the worry-free XDR portion, while Lamont covers the co-managed offering. And we all know about ransomware, and we heard about how it's evolved from Lamont into modern ransomware with new tactics, techniques. That's really where the suite comes in. Worry-free services XDR, or sometimes we just call it worry-free XDR. Traditional methods of just protecting the endpoint really aren't sufficient when we know much of the access is gained through an email or cloud application. And so worry-free XDR covers all these attack vectors with visibility and endpoint detection and response across those environments. So to be clear, the worry-free XDR package comes with endpoint protection, email protection, and then protection across cloud applications like Box or Dropbox or OneDrive. And then putting all that telemetry together, it has endpoint detection and response across those platforms. And this is important because we now have visibility on where and how something's occurred, whether it originated from an email or someone downloaded an attachment on the endpoint. When you think of XDR, think of products now talking to each other to cross-correlate suspicious activity, and then being able to take action or respond to those events. So let's talk a little about how it works. Because we're connected to both email and endpoints, we can gather telemetry, that's thousands of data points or activity from both environments. We then feed that data into a data lake, analyzing it through threat intelligence and security analytics. And then we give you a visual attack story, as well as a breakdown of why these events are suspicious, so then you can respond based on actionable intelligence. And remember, worry-free XDR will connect to both email and cloud applications. For Office 365, this is done through API, so you don't need to redirect MX records to set this up. So that means cloud app security, that component can be set up in just a matter of minutes, and it can even connect to G Suite. Once it's connected, you can scan all your emails, discover spam, phishing attempts, BEC that Lamont talked about, malicious URLs, or malicious files like ransomware. And one really cool feature that I want to mention is it allows you to scan the existing Exchange Online data store. Those are emails that have already made it through your Office 365 environment and are currently sitting in people's boxes. With this, you can actually go back and scan those boxes. Let's take this example of a phishing site. And credential phishing sites look very convincing. They're similar to the real site, and they can even sometimes have a valid SSL sign-in. We analyze all these attributes of the site to determine, is it fraudulent? And our built-in computer vision that Lamont mentioned earlier, it has AI that detects fake credential sites, and using machine learning and then analyzing things like branded elements and site forms, we can tell you whether or not this is actually a phishing or a fake site. But let's just say for a minute that the hackers, they get access to your email somehow anyway. And then they go in and they write an email from your actual account for fraudulent reasons. Then what? Well, we have authorship analysis, or as we call it, writing style DNA. And this is one of the coolest features I've ever seen. It will analyze your writing style and decide whether or not you wrote the email, even if the email account was compromised and it was coming directly from you. Our AI will analyze the behavior of the email as well as the writer's intention. So, for example, take an email coming directly from the VP of Finance, who doesn't normally ask to reroute checks to a new banking account number. That's questionable behavior with the financial intention. It'll even analyze their grammar and sentence structure to decide if they typically write emails like this. And that really gives you and the end user the ability to get notice of these types of red flags. Then once we've gathered that telemetry from your endpoints and now your emails, we'll then put that information together for you. And here's an example of that visualization of the attack story. You can see here an email has a suspicious URL. You can see 7 other people have received this email and who they are. You can then see when they received it and what was attached. And then in one click, you can take action on all 7 emails. And keep in mind, this is across customers. Imagine how long something like this would take you to do as a manual process today. And as you can see here, some basic features of the worry-free XDR, these are just basic features that are included, are machine learning, both pre-execution and runtime. You have virtual patching, DLP, device control. There's full disk encryption included. You have URL filtering and application control. And remember, XDR comes with email and endpoint protection plus this EDR component, which really gives you better visibility and control into suspicious activity or indications of compromise in your customer's environment. And when you think about it, this component allows you to understand, in the event of an attack, why did this happen? Who else might be impacted? Or maybe what occurred and did this put my client's environment at risk? EDR is a tool, keep in mind, that can help you address the questions CEOs of companies that you manage might ask. Are we affected by the same attack our competitor just faced? Or is there a previously undetected attack in our environment? And if so, what did it do? Where did it spread? And how are we impacted by this? So with that, let me hand it off to Lamont, who will then talk a little about our co-managed offering.
Yeah, thank you, Beston, for talking a little bit about the worry-free XDR technology. I want to focus on the second suite we want to introduce you today. And it combines all of the great technology that Beston talked about, but it adds the people element. And I think in cybersecurity, it's the people element, the people resources, that's that big gap between being protected and being potentially at risk. And so the way you think about our worry-free with co-managed XDR is that it's a SOC as a service type of offering for MSPs and their clients. And so let's dig a little deeper into this service offering. So as I mentioned, the suite combines the worry-free XDR technology with security analysts and experts. These experts really allow MSPs to extend their existing IT staff with 24/7 expert monitoring, investigation, remediation, and response types of services. This solution is very, very easy to implement, and that the same solutions that you're using to protect the client's email, endpoint, and cloud applications, they're also functioning as intelligent sensors, feeding data back into our SOC. Therefore, our experts can help you with that analysis 24/7. So this is an offering that the way to think about it is worry-free XDR is the technology that would enable you, the partner, to deliver managed detection and response services. But as I mentioned, a lot of MSPs struggle with IT resources, but also limited cybersecurity expertise. And so this service combines both the technology and service into one comprehensive offering, offered all in the same monthly pay-as-you-go type of model. So why do we call it co-managed working? Why do we call that? So this is the visualization, if you will, of how the co-managed working model works. And really, I think this model should be an important consideration for MSPs if you are evaluating SOC as a service solutions. Essentially leveraging the worry-free XDR technology, our SOC team does all the heavy lifting as it relates to cybersecurity. So that's monitoring, detection, investigation, response, really allowing the MSP to focus their IT resources, for example, on more critical business initiatives, for example. And so, but also, I think another key thing about the co-working model is it also ensures that the MSP remains in the value stream with the client, right? We like to say that this service helps MSPs be the security heroes with their clients. And so it's kind of transparent to the end customer. And we look like an extension to your existing team. But also at the same time, by working with our security experts, your existing IT resources also gain invaluable cybersecurity expertise. So that's a little bit of why we call it the co-working model. Let's drill down into the actual service portfolio of this particular offering. So our SOC team will really partner with your staff to deliver services across this cybersecurity framework. So for example, in the detection phase, we'll provide that 24/7 monitoring of noteworthy events, as well as proactive threat hunting using IOCs, or indicators of compromise, or IOAs, indicators of attack from our own threat research and intelligence, but also from governmental agencies, for example, from CISA, for example. And so this is a quick and easy way to take your cybersecurity operation to a 24/7 type of operation. In the investigation stage, I would say this is probably the most heavy lifting for MSPs, but also requires the most skill set in particular. But our team, working with yours, will conduct root cause analysis, as well as cross-user, cross-product, and cross-client analysis. And I'll drill down on that cross-customer item in just a further second, because I think it's a very unique feature of this particular SOC as a service offering. And so if we find something during that investigation stage, our team will proactively take those mitigation steps, such as isolating endpoints, terminating processes, blocking suspicious objects, or even quarantining suspicious emails, for example. And so in the later two phases there of response and remediation, our team will coordinate with yours to actually respond to that threat and take those mitigation actions, and providing things such as incident reports, policy assessment reports, and help you mitigate any future potential threats, for example. So regardless of the cybersecurity framework that you may adhere to, NIST, CMMC, for example, these services really help address key areas of any threat lifecycle that may happen. So let's jump into how it works just a little bit more to kind of drill down on how the service offering is delivered, if you will. So it breaks down into these four stages, if you will, on how it works. So in this example, it starts with that monitoring stage. And this is where we will monitor existing correlations, but also become proactive and go threat hunting, if you will. Basically, as you know, take the Russia-Ukraine situation. There's been a lot of IOCs, or indicators of compromise, that have been released from governmental agencies. We will proactively do those IOC assessments across your clients so that you can help answer that question. Hey, am I potentially affected by this newer type of attack vector, for example? But here in the initial stage, for example, we'll determine if an alert is actually noteworthy or not. I think it's very important for MSPs, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of alert overload. And so this helps weed out that noise, eliminate a lot of false positives, as our team is doing that heavy lifting of monitoring and determining that initial analysis out. Now, if the alert is relevant, this is where we kick off that investigation stage to determine the impact scope, the root cause analysis, but also will allow us to kick off a proactive threat assessment across other clients that may be under your management. And I'll talk about that here in just a second in a little bit more detail. And then finally, at that last stage there, our team will help you respond and mitigate to the security incident. And so this is a little bit of the process flow, if you will, of how those services are being delivered. So I mentioned a few times the cross customer threat hunting or assessments, another word I use. So I want to drill down on this because I think this is specifically really important to MSPs who are managing multiple customers. And so this is a proactive cross customer threat hunting feature, essentially, that we know that MSPs are usually managing multiple clients, often from the same vertical. So, for example, maybe one of your financial clients received a compromised email. The odds are so did another one of your clients. And so I call this multi tenant detection and response. You heard that here first, by the way. I'm coining that word. But this allows an MSP to get very proactive and mitigate any threats before they affect other customers. And so this is a feature that we offer as part of our SOC as a service offering. Or if you're just leveraging worry-free XDR, we give you the tools to actually conduct these cross-customer assessments. And so with that, I want to share one of the key outputs of this service. And this is a screenshot, very small screenshot, by the way, of an example incident report. I think this is very valuable to demonstrate that value to the customer anytime there's an incident, whether it's a false positive or a real incident. Our team will generate these incident reports in addition to a few other reports that I kind of glossed over earlier. But these are some of the key sections of this report. There's a summary of how the attack happened. There's an impact scope. There's an analysis chain. In certain cases, there's an action needed section. Maybe there's some things that we can't do. For example, hey, we need you to modify this firewall, for example. So it'll kind of give you a long overview of how our SOC team responded to a said incident. And obviously, you can rebrand that, co-brand that, and share that with your customer, share that with auditors, maybe regulatory auditors or cyber insurance brokers, for example, who are looking for proof that you had the right security controls in place during a time of a breach. And so this is just one example of the outputs of that service, for example. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Sam, to close us out here.
Fantastic. Well, some of you might already be wondering, you know what? This is great. How do I get started? Well, a good place to start actually is right with Sherweb. We have, as you can see on the slide, we've got an opportunity here to, engage with your reps that you're already working with, and do mention Trend Micro because we do have essentially up to 75 free seats of worry-free XDR that are going to be under the not for resale licenses. So this stuff is already live actually in Cumulus, which means pretty much at any moment now you can turn the corner, pick up the phone, get in touch with your rep, and see how you can get first started. I'm not going to transition too quickly away from this slide, but I will say that I've got a couple really good questions in the chat here, and I'm excited to be able to answer those with the full panel in just a minute. To speak a little bit more to some of those questions we've received. Fantastic timing, Lamont. Thank you.
Coordination there.
I'm seeing a few really interesting ones. I'm going to start actually with the easier ones, and we're going to work our way into some of the more complex ones as well. So one of the simple ones, hey, can you explain the licensing model? I.e., is it user-based or is it endpoint-based or so on and so forth? So to explore this one a little bit, I think I can try my hand at this one first. Lamont, of course, tell me if I've done my homework right or not. This is endpoint based. So the way that a lot of this works actually is that the licensing model will start with a number of endpoints that you decide to activate essentially the Trend microservices on once you've of course got the agent on there. And then from there, you can pretty much just get right into setup, configuration, and using your licenses, and then essentially build on a peak of the month is essentially what comes through to your invoicing.
Spot
I think
on.
that I
Spot
think
on,
that
Sam.
covers it.
Spot on. That's exactly right. It's endpoint based as it relates to the email solution. It's domain based. So if there's one endpoint license, then it technically covers the entire domain. However, to be within license compliance, you should license by the number of endpoints because the endpoint is part of all the suites that we discussed today.
That's fantastic. I'll cover off actually another one that has come through. Um, oh, I've got another one that's just come in. I think this one's another easy one. Do you integrate with RMMs like ConnectWise or Kaseya?
The answer is yes. We integrate both with ConnectWise Manage from the PSA perspective, so you can send usage data into the service agreements, etc. And we also integrate with their Automate tool. So there's a direct integration to facilitate management of Trend Micro agents and services via the Automate tool. On the Kaseya side, yes, with Kaseya VSA, we also support Datto, for example, as another RMM option as well if you're using that tool.
Fantastic. Um, in the interest of time, actually, I think we'll be able to cover a lot of these questions. I'm going to jump to one of the earlier ones that we received. Do we have any predefined compliance templates, let's say for HIPAA or something of the sort?
The answer is yes. We understand that. So remember, worry free is the theme here. We understand that data loss prevention can actually be a lot of effort. And so we offer data loss prevention both at the endpoint level. And I think, Beston, you're the PMM, but there's over 300 different pre-configured templates around compliance, one of them obviously being HIPAA, others being PCI, for example. We also offer DLP for cloud applications, so data going in and out of Office 365, Microsoft 365 components such as OneDrive, email. So there's two layers, if you will, of data loss prevention. Both have pre-configured templates to make that just a little bit more worry-free. And you can even put it in a policy mode where at the beginning you're just monitoring. So maybe before you enable a policy, you can monitor which data is being shared either through email endpoint as well as other network type of methods. Anything to add there, Beston?
No, I think you covered it all. So the predefined templates are both on the endpoint and email. So, and like you mentioned, there's other network storage devices that we can also cover. So, for example, let's say I set up a DLP policy around PCI or HIPAA or something, and I go and take some information, I try to print it, and I'm not supposed to, or maybe I'm someone that has access to the information, but I'm misusing the information. I can set up a DLP policy with a predefined template, and then set the policy around what kind of transmission I'm allowed.
Fantastic. Let's jump into some of the larger, more complex ones that I definitely think you guys are going to be interested in. Um, Can you elaborate on the change from the mixed cocktail kind of approach to this essentially newer philosophy of one app solutions? Historically, MSPs would see multiple applications being used rather than just kind of a single master one. What's changed in that space to come back to a single solution model?
Very good question. I think the threat landscape is what changed. I call this the I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket approach to security. So you may have vendor A on the endpoint, vendor B on the email, vendor C on the network. And I think historically that was the mentality. But the challenge I see with that is multiple fold now with the current threat landscape. One is correlation. Those different vendors all at different pieces are not correlating threat data and information coming from all those various layers of attack, or what we refer to at Trend as attack surfaces, for example. That's one thing. I think things on itself, for example, may not be substantial, but when correlated with other information, could become an indicator of attack. So I would say the threat landscape has really changed. It says, well, it's better together story. The more I can correlate data across different avenues or different layers of attack, the more likely I'm going to be able to detect something and then mitigate that before the consequences turn, more dire, if you will, right? If you see an endpoint, if you see a ransomware detection, the consequences of one endpoint versus 1,000 are vastly different. And so I think the threat landscape has really changed that. The other thing that I'm looking at from when I talk to MSPs is the manageability and operational effort associated with managing multiple different solutions at different layers, not only from a management side, but hey, tech support side, right? If you have tech support issues, you got to reach the 3 different vendors and things of that nature. And so I think just the dynamic, the old conversation of vendor consolidation is back as a result of today's threat landscape. Besson, Sam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, and that was really a great response, I would say that visibility, right? So if you have a point product on one system, let's say email, and you've got another point product, let's say Trend Micro on the endpoint. Um, if my endpoint gets affected, great, Trend Micro stops it, wonderful. But what about the other endpoints, and are those affected? And what about my other clients? And then where did this really come from? If it came from an email, who else received the email? And have all my clients received this email? How do I start talking to these products? And I think that's what's brought in, initially, I think when we talked about consolidating products, it was about ease of use and manageability. Now it's really about the threat landscape. It's about communicating with these products, correlating events, and then saying, hey, like Lamont said, here's a suspicious activity. Here's another suspicious activity. Someone's trying to do something in my network. They're using everyday tasks that might seem normal, like installing software that backs something up. But really what they're doing is they're exfiltrating data. And I figured that out because we've correlated events from an email that sent this out, what it's responding to, where it's sending that data. And so visibility is a big one. And then remediation, right? So now I can see what's happening, but how can I respond? So can I go in and then now take an action across customers, especially if I see something malicious, across all my clients all at once? And so I think that's what's really brought the consolidation back.
Interesting. It's really fascinating to see how far we've come, kind of full circle on that. Based in, like, paradigms change kind of one day to the next, practically, when it comes to being as agile as possible against some of these threats. I've got quite a few more questions actually in here. Uh, I'm going to kind of handpick a couple more to make sure that we can kind of get a solid breadth of expertise kind of out there. So I'm seeing one here. If this service uses AI to detect email writing anomalies, how is privacy and security handled in that case? Are there copies of email messages being retained and stored within this service?
The answer is no. And we can give you a detailed link of how technically there are no human eyes seeing emails, if you will. So it's all kind of AI related, if you will. And we definitely have a specific what data we're quote unquote collecting and how we're using it. So I think the best way to answer that one would actually maybe best you can pull up the link because there's a specific link. This is one of the most common questions associated with the authorship analysis type of detection technologies for BEC. So there's a specific link that we can share in order to give you the exact details. But the short answer is there are no human eyes. There is no data that's leaving your environment into ours, for example. Again, since we're tying in at that API level into Microsoft's ecosystem, that gives us that visibility. And there's a little learning, like before you can implement this technology, I think it learns using maybe 600 emails, 500 emails, something like that. It kind of looks at to try to identify a path. So, Besson, anything else to add on that one?
No, I think that's a good response. Again, Trend Micro doesn't store any of these emails. We're building algorithms around your style of writing, right? So as I mentioned, when we talk about writing style as an example, we might say we talked a little about behavior and intention, right? So this email, it'll look at it, it'll analyze it, it'll say, hey, who's the person, how do they normally write emails in terms of grammar and style, and then what are they asking for? What's the intention of this email? If it's asking for keywords and things that might be associated to redirecting a bank account to a new number, we're going to look at that behavior and intention and say, hey, look, this looks like it's malicious. It looks like this person doesn't typically write an email like this.
And we'll
Fantastic. That's
follow
a
up with
great
that
answer.
link.
I've actually, having worked in AI before, there's a lot, honestly, that I would love to unpack with some people from your product team as well, to kind of poke around and kick the tires a little on that one. It's pretty exciting. I've got a couple more questions here that I think we've got time to answer. One here asks, does the Trend microservice offer email encryption services?
The answer is yes. So actually, in today's presentation about worry-free XDR, there are technically three components. We only really just touched on two: the cloud app security component, which is like the advanced, cloud app protection. However, and the endpoint. However, worry-free XDR comes with what we call the traditional SaaS email gateway solution, essentially where you redirect your MX records over to our data centers to do all the magic filtering in and out. That service actually includes policy-based encryption for emails as well. So the answer is yes, through our what we call email security service, which is bundled with worry-free EDR, cloud app security, and EMS. All of those three solutions equal worry-free XDR.
Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of a big question here that I think I'll be able to take myself. Will there be a centralized dashboard to see all of your clients and organizations outside of Cumulus? This piece, actually, I can answer directly. The answer is yes. Trend Micro has, for the Worry Free Suite, actually two different portals that are essentially cousins, if not siblings, that work extremely well together to kind of hand off different responsibilities when it comes to, for example, the management of licenses versus the management of the actual security service. And so a lot of the license management level things will happen within their LMP, the license management platform. And a lot of the security service related management will happen through their centralized, essentially one pane of glass that is the Trend Micro Remote Manager.
Sam, killing it. Yes. As we talked about very early on, this is a platform. The worry-free XDR fits within an ecosystem. And so the remote manager and the LMP are partner-facing tools that allows them to manage all their customers, conduct cross-customer assessments. So, wow, Sam, you're killing it today. And it's this piece that we really didn't talk about today, but an important component to ease and make cybersecurity a lot more worry-free.
It's almost as though that title was by design. I'm sorry. That's a bad pun that we're catching on record. I'm very sorry. Let's see. I'm gonna have a look at probably taking on like one or two more questions, and that way we might be able to let everybody go, or honestly let everybody off the hook a couple minutes early. So let's see, what else can I tackle quickly. I'm seeing a question come in here around the support for Ninja RMM and Synchro MSP. Are these two kind of somewhere on the roadmap? Are these actually already supported? Or maybe if the answer is no, then is the answer no?
The answer is, the answer is no, not natively, for example. So like with Automate and Kaseya, we have native plugins. However, I've had multiple conversations with both Synchro and Ninja requesting that integration. And I think in the case of Synchro, for example, like they just really don't have an open ecosystem model. They like to OEM other vendors, and so that to me wasn't on our approach. And so If you can help bridge that conversation and request that, we would love to integrate with as many RMM tools as possible. Particularly, we're seeing, a lot of new players, I would say, to the traditional RMM space beyond Kaseya and ConnectWise. We're seeing Altera, you're seeing Ninja, and you're seeing Synchro really come into the space. And definitely, I've put out fillers to talk to them. So anything that we can get partners to push, that would be great as well. And I think as they mature, to be honest, they'll probably focus more on an open ecosystem type of model that we've seen kind of become more prevalent within the industry. But unfortunately, not natively is the short answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for the update. Actually, that's pretty great. I'm seeing, actually, we've got time for maybe one or two more. So I'm going to get in there and have a look. Um, yes. Are there any FAQ sites to show some of those how-tos and how to get our feet below us when it comes to the Trend Micro solutions? I'm sure there are, but I definitely like to make that as public as possible for what the answer might be.
Oh, Besson, I saw you. I thought you were going to take that one. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
I was to say, yes, there are currently FAQs on really on and how-tos to do most all of these, all the things that you're going to need to be able to get off and run and deploy and manage. In in addition to how-tos, there's also YouTube videos and links to actually walk you through those steps. And if there's something in specific that you say, hey, I'm stuck here, it's too broad, I want to figure out how to do a specific test, we can actually just get you a how-to really quickly for something like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And probably a little deeper into those FAQs, I'd want to ask on behalf of someone in the chat, installing those agents silently, is that something we could do?
Correct. Yes. And through multiple mechanisms, GPO, web-based link, RMM tool, right? You can auto deploy via the RMM tool anytime a new machine comes within the Kaseya or the ConnectWise or Datto environments. There's an auto deploy function, really making sure that your customers have coverage there. So yes, silently. If you're doing it through like GPO, you just do a /s type of deployment there. But one last note on the FAQ.
Mhm.
There is a great subject matter expert at Sherweb, and his name is James Sawyer. He can also assist on the technical side with walkthroughs and things of that nature. So I want to plug him as well.
Fantastic. I'm sure that James, who's on the call, would be happy to hear his the direct reference on that one. And of course, um, there's a lot of fantastic resources that we're going to be able to provide to pretty much anybody who might be needing them. I'm seeing here one last question that I might take. It's this one's actually an easy one. Is the pricing for this live in Cumulus right now? The answer is yes. Due to a small administrative hitch, unfortunately, you haven't seen this come through on the price list just yet for the partner price list. However, it is live already, so purchasing can pretty much start. Similar to some of the other products that we have, this one is one of them that is billed per usage, and it is essentially billed in arrears. So you're only ever going to see your bill come in essentially the following month. So let's say you started tomorrow. Well, you'd have essentially your usage for the rest of the month of April. That would be only billed on your May invoice. So that is kind of part of the name of the game based on our current integration. Let me see if, you know what, in the interest of time, I might squeeze one more, trying to get you just a little bit more value here. What else can I see? I think that covers a lot of them. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to kind of have this open conversation with you both, get to explore, all the potential that there is in terms of expanding service offerings, bringing in better, more cross-correlated event responses through technology and or actually a SOC as a service, truly with the Trend Micro solutions. So Beston, Lamont, thank you. As well to all of our attendees, greatly appreciate your time. Thank you very much for all of your involvement, all of your questions today. Any of the remaining questions, there were just a few that were a little bit more targeted. I'll be able to get in touch with some of the other organizers and your reps, and we'll make sure to send you an answer as soon as possible. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. And on behalf of Sherweb and Trend Micro, that's all from us.
Excellent. Take care, everyone. Thank you for your time.